What's good with it in the hood with it? Welcome back to the collective clips where you already know the gun's about to get it in. But before I get it in, I mean, right before, when she's like, just put it in. Right before I get it in, I hit her with the intro. Welcome back to the collective clips. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking. And I appreciate the support, man. I'm very humbled by it. Thank you. So, 100-man riot in Tehachapi prison on the SNY Yard. Don't get it twisted. They're going rowdy on the SNY Yards lately, right? Body after body after body, pretty much in the whole CDC, whether it's general population or SNY or these non-designated programming yards. There's definitely a lot going on, man. And we've been talking about it for weeks here on this channel and on my other channel. And I could say this, on May 2nd, which was the other day, and 100-man riot popped off at Tehachapi on the SNY Yard. Now, that means several people were involved. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean 100 people were actually involved. That means there was 100 people on the yard they assume were involved. And one never knows, does one? I know there was 11 improvised weapons, meaning there was 11 pedazos made that they found on that yard. Doesn't mean they were utilized during this riot. It doesn't mean that they had sangre or blood all over them. It just means that these were discovered on the yard. And it is what it is. Now, at the end of the day, you know, this goes back to the video I did the other day. Who's dropping more bodies, the general population or the SNY yards? And I told you guys, man, it was neck and neck, but the SNY was pushing, right? And that's just the truth and the facts. There's a lot of people that like to dispel, or they have rumors, or they believe the propaganda that SNY is a bunch of PC cases, punks, rats, chomos, weirdos, various other things, right? J-cats. But the fact is, there are a lot of people who were once part of prison organizations or prison groups that did defect, fell off, got removed, whatever, right? And ended up on these SNY yards. And a lot of them, not all of them, but I'd say 50% of them have decided that if for no other reason, they would join up with these protective custody gangs, these groups that were started for whatever reason. A lot of people like to say they were started, these SNY gangs, for self-preservation, for protection, for safety and security reasons. But 99% of the guys that do get involved in them just still want to play the game. They still want to be active. They still want to act like they're somebody. But, you know, in the words of someone who was for reals, once it's over, man. You got to understand that. You got to grasp it. You got to fucking rub it all over your chest and realize, man, once you're not in good standings, no matter how many tattoos you get, no matter what stories you tell, no matter how gangster you try to act, you're never going to be considered good in the eyes of those who are still continuing to do what they do. Respectfully, it's all good, man. I am one of those guys in that situation. Now, I never chose to join up with a non-active prison gang or a dropout gang. And the reasons were, I just didn't see how you go from the majors to the minors. I just didn't understand the mentality there. You know, I'm not a pretend gangster. I'm not a play gangster or a wannabe. I did it. I lived it. I realized, hell no, I'm not cut out for this life. I'm not. You know, it's funny when a lot of people say, you're not cut from the cloth. You're not ready. You weren't fucking ready to go all out. No, I was not. I was for several years until I realized, hey, I want to go home, man. Right? I want to go out there and take care of my children. And I understand there's guys that want to do the exact same thing, but they're not in the position to do it. And I don't wolf or hate on them at any point in time, because I understand decisions and choices you make in life are going to dictate how your life turns out. So I made the conscious decision, and it wasn't out of my free will, because at that time I was still had the burning flame in my heart for the North, right? But when things went down the way it went down and the politics fell the way they fell, and I found myself on the shitty end of it, well, I guess getting out of here was probably the best thing I could have done, because I'm no longer an all-in shit, right? I wasn't all in. My mentality was different. I was all in for me. I was all in for my family, but I wasn't all in for the gang. So I was a liability. I was a concern. I was a safety risk, right? Because if I'm not using what I was indoctrinated with or educated with, or I don't have that burning desire to go out there and continue to politic on people and do that, then you're right. I wasn't cut out for that life. I'll be the first to admit it. You know, I'm not cut out for doing all day, every day, and walking around fucking from tier to tier in my boxers with 2 guys grabbing my arms, escorting me. It's just not my thing. For those that are going through the struggle, respects. And I see where you're coming from, but you got to see where I'm coming from. Now, we had a 100-man riot. And I'm sure I don't know the inner workings or the details because I'm not being fed misinformation or any information by any polices, right? But I will tell you from what I've seen and who I've talked to, and that's why it took me a few days to do this video. It was between 2 SNY groups, and it was a dispute over simple prison politics. Because don't get it twisted, there is prison politics being played on the SNY yards. It might not be racially. You know, one thing about the SNY yards is they're not racially divided. You got guys mixing and mingling from every side. You know, dudes that used to be Crips or used to be on Paru Bloods, dudes that used to be Woods, brother. I mean, fucking good Woods too. Well, not good Woods anymore. Now they're like, now they're plywood, but they used to be peckerwood. And then, of course, North and South. But that doesn't mean people still don't break off into their certain groups. You know, that's the mentality, tribalism, especially when it comes to the Mexican gang culture. You know, if you were, say, a Southsider or a Norteño, you're going to feel more comfortable around other people that were what you were. You guys got the same understandings. You lived that same life. You know, you grew up the same way. So there's going to be a lot of interaction. And one thing I noticed being on a 50-50 yard, you'll see dudes gravitating towards the people they once functioned or fucked with because that's just all they know. It's an all you know attitude, right? That doesn't mean you won't see black dudes and white dudes chilling, playing basketball together, which you wouldn't see on a general population yard. That doesn't mean you won't see North and South. Well, nowadays it's a little bit different with the end of hostilities. There's a little bit more fraternizing going on, a little bit more business, a little bit more conversation. You know, back in my days, it was a buenos dias. How you doing? Keep it pushing on that track, right? Nowadays, it's a little bit more, it's a different living situation, right? I ain't mad at it. In fact, man, it's something I always wanted to see because I've never had an issue with the Southsider besides business and nothing personal. But on the SNY side, you don't have them barriers. You don't have that. So there's going to be more interaction. There's going to be more conversations. Guess what else? There's going to be more drama. And the reason there's going to be more drama is because if you don't have any structure or politics that says you guys can't interact or do business together, well, guess what? If one group or one race or one ethnicity or one gang person or one whatever decides to burn someone else or disrespect them, then that could fucking set it off. Now, you say to yourself, I thought on the SNY side, it's every man for himself. Well, it used to be. That was what it was supposed to be utilized for. Once you get over there, once you're on a non-conforming yard or a yard that is not considered good or general population, then it is all about you. It's all about minding your own business and doing your own thing. But see, as humans, man, the human nature is to gravitate towards other people. That's why gangs were started in the first place. You know, it's not cool to be by yourself. You know, so you want the homie, and next thing you want another homie, and hey, homie, don't you know me? And next thing you know, you guys are considered a security threat group. Now you're a gang. So with this infusion of dropout gangs being on these SNY yards, there's going to be a lot more drama. Why? Because now you have their little politics, what they've created, what they believe in their minds to be something, and they're going to continue with that. There's a lot of dudes that feel that they were bamboozled or done dirty on the general population. So now this is their second opportunity to shine. This is their second opportunity to be what they've always wanted to be without the overseeing eye, without fucking an organization telling them what they can and cannot do. They got a little bit more freedoms. They still dedicate themselves to a gang. They still dedicate themselves to a group and to those rules and regulations. And some of them guys take that shit to heart. They're willing to go the extra mile. And that's why you have several killings on these SNY yards. Because you have a lot of these non-active gangs, or to them, they're active, right? And they, I guess, if you fucking really look at the word active, it's an action word, right? So they're really willing to get it. Now, this was 2 groups. I'm not going to mention the name of the groups that got into it for whatever reason. And again, like I said, on these SNY yards, because there's so much interaction and there's no racial lines and all that drawn, That means there's going to be a lot more bullshit. See, it's like what people think when they think general population yard. Automatically, you think, from the movies you've seen or what you've heard or even what you've done while you've been on the yard that, oh, the blacks and the whites don't get along. They're always getting into it. The South and the North are always getting into it. The South and the blacks are always getting into it. The blacks and really, because there's so much less of an interaction between the groups other than a respectful, because you're supposed to keep it respectful with everybody, no matter of their race, ethnicity, all that. There's going to be a lot less confusion and conflict. I mean, if you're not doing business with the black dude as a Southsider, then you don't have to worry about having any interaction or conversation. So there's really going to be a less opportunity or a chance for anything cracking off. That's why in the general population yards, you don't have riots like this that happen. You don't have people getting metaflighted. When it does go down, it goes down. But it's very infrequent. You don't see it happen a lot. I mean, when's the last real major riot on a general population yard we all talk about? That's the Pelican Bay incident, right? All these riots that you hear about, these melees, happen on the SNY yards because there's a lot more business being conducted amongst different groups. There's a lot more drama. There's a lot more action, right? Doesn't mean general population ain't about the business. I think we all know by now over there, it's not about scraping, cutting, and fighting. It's all about bodies. Okay, that's just the attitude. That's the way it goes. So anyways, it goes down in the Tehachapi yard. Now, Tehachapi has been a notorious prison for years. In fact, I've been to Tehachapi before, not on the yard, never been in the prison as far as that. But I remember as a young kid, when the movie Rocky 3 came out, I thought I was motherfucking Clubber Lang like a motherfucker. Hey, woman, right? My dad was in Tehachapi prison. And don't ask me if he was general population. There was no SNYs back then. I didn't even know how to spell SNY, right? He was on the main line. He's an old school, northerner by proxy, right? Just because he grew up in Modesto. But he wasn't like how it is now, okay? They weren't playing them bullshit. It was serious. It was men stabbing men for acting stupid is what it was. And I remember as a young kid, me and my mom, my mom, I think she had my sister. She was getting babysit. It was just me and my mom. We went for a trailer visit. A few days, man. They had these trailers. I remember it was snowing. My dad came in with gloves on, a beanie, big old jacket. And I was all happy because it was my father. He was in and out of prison my whole life. And we went for a trailer visit. And I remember mom's made the bomb spaghetti. And I was watching Rocky 3. They had a little TV. And moms and dad was in there doing the wild thing to some Tone Loc. That's just how it was. Hey, that actually created my brother. He was conceived out of Tehachapi prison. So I got a history with Tehachapi, or at least he does. Been there. But it was always known as a notorious prison. A prison that didn't fuck around. A lot of people, when you mention Tehachapi, they're like, man, that's one of the prisons that was up there and has always been up there. But you do have an SNY yard in that prison. Things have changed. Times have changed. A lot of these prisons that we once had a notorious reputation, or we once thought like, about, is not what it is anymore. When you hear the word San Quentin, those from the old school are like, Guimas, but it's not that. Tracy, Gladiator School, it wasn't that. It wasn't the Gladiator School of the 70s and 80s. It was just a reception. You go there, or you go to fucking Z or X Storm, in the main line, which was like a 2 or 3, and it was nothing. Okay, the hardest part about Tracy was the drinking that fucked up water. Facts. Or how it stunk in the cells. Or getting electrocuted using a stinger. Those that know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about when I say stinger, right? So this riot goes down between two non-active gangs that got active on the yard. And like I said, it was 11 improvised weapons. Obviously, it wasn't that serious because nobody got killed in this riot. So it was just an all-out Royal Rumble, a frenzy. I've been noticing this happening a lot. Something's in the KoolAid that doesn't add up. Something in CDC right now is causing these grown men to conform to chaos. There is something going on right now, and I'm going to get down to the bottom of it and tell you guys what I really think. This is what the facts of what the gun thinks, right? Now, I never did time during this end of hostilities, and I respect the men who established the end of hostilities, and we all know what it was for. And it was for, not only was it for prisoners' rights, to bring attention to the misdeeds and how they were being treated in the back by the administration and by the Juras. What it was, even more so than that, was an opportunity to show unity, to show that if 4 different mentalities and organizations could come together. They could set a precedent and show that unity amongst convicts is power, and basically to get the fuck up out of those out the back, because they were being given these indeterminate shoes that was really treacherous, right? And they were able to establish that. They were able to win in courts. Brilliant minds came together, and they got out. And I know before people were saying, "Oh, they're criminals. They don't got." There's a lot of brilliant criminals. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of people that just they made wrong choices in life. And there's a lot of dudes that are still making the wrong choices. It doesn't mean that they're not smart or brilliant. They know what it is. And there's a lot of dudes that are brilliant for getting out the way because they realized, hey, man, this ain't for me. They might have seen some things. They might have seen the disloyalty or the treachery within their particular group and decided, hey, it's not for me. Or they got whacked and removed, whatever. However the fuck you end up on the other side, you end up on the other side. The fact is, having never done time in the end of hostilities, I've only heard stories. I have homeboys that were actually some buddies that did time that have told me. I asked them, how is it, bro? How is it kicking with the Southsiders like that? Show! Soul gang. How is it, bro? And they're like, nah, bro, it's love, it's respect. This is pretty much the same thing. It's just we're not fucking, the threat's always there. The threat's always going to be there. But we're on a half 60, basically, bro. Soft defensive stance. We're not pursuing the on-site shit and all that. Which we weren't when I was locked up either, man. Some of the Southsiders that were my neighbors were some of the coolest people I ever met. And our interaction was sliding soapbox to each other. That's fact. So because you have that, CDC has decided, you know what? We don't like the fact that these guys won, that we got egg on our face, that these guys were able to get out back to these yards, people who they felt they had thrown away the key on. So now they've decided to, and it's been going on for years now, the integration. At first it started with, certain different groups. And when they realized these groups were actually holding their word and being men and programming together, well, now they had to throw a fucking wrench in the spoke. So now they started to, do those non-designated yards where they brought SNY guys and it's all good. Like, look, dudes are going to trip. If you're not active, you're not with the business, you done what they feel your group dirty. Yeah, you're not welcome to them yards. They're not going to function. No active general population guy is going to function on a yard with what they consider trash. Okay. They consider those trash yards. That's their words, not mine. Just what it is. Right. I get it. I understand it. I lived it. I pushed it. I was part of that. Right. So I understand the whole get down one way or the other. There are those that are on those SNY yards, that are on those 50-50 yards, that are on those yards that actually want to change, that actually are trying to change, that want to go home, that want to do better. Doesn't mean they're snitching or debriefing or telling or none of that. It just means they're staying the fuck up out the mix and out the way, and they're doing their time like men. Now, it doesn't mean if someone runs up in the cell and runs up on them, they won't get to slicing and dicing. You got to do what you got to do. It's what it is, right? Like I said, the knife is sharp on whatever yard you're on. Doesn't matter if you're on the general population yard or the SNY yard. That knife is sharp, okay? The knife doesn't get more duller depending upon what yard you go to. Give a fuck if it's 1 yard McFarland or if it's a motherfucking 4 yard high desert. It does not matter. That knife is the same sharpness on every yard. Just remember I said that. That's real knowledge you can't get in college, right? So with a riot like this happening, I think it's part of the convicts striking back against administration, because administration is trying to basically fuck people's careers off, fuck people's times off. The more incidents that happen, the more bloodshed, they're going to be able to go back to court and show, hey, once these guys were released, chaos ensued. But the only reason chaos ensued is because they continue to mix and mingle these guys that traditionally, because of prison politics, they're rocking the boat, can't function together. What do you expect to happen? Now, as far as these SNY riots and stuff like that, flash in the pan, it happens all the time. There's a lot of melees and riots and little things that happen pretty much all the time that we don't even hear about. This one, because there was 100 inmates involved, it sounds a little bit more tricky. But the fact is, if there's no bodies, you clean up the little bit of blood, the OC agent, and keep it pushing. Now, I did read an article where they said these guys are going to be on a modified program. And I was under the assumption they were already on some form of fashion of modified program. This is that modified program is another way of a lockdown. So people that want to go visit their loved ones or do any of that, they're going to be on standby for right now. But everything's going to get back to what it gets back to. Now, when two groups on the yard have a riot, Okay, what they usually do is identify those guys from them particular groups and they slam them in the hole. It's pretty questionable to me because now the way that they do it, no one goes to the hole forever. You do about 2 weeks in the hole, you're right back out to the same yard. So it's going to be a situation where this could be only the first get down and it just continues until eventually people get tired of it. But usually through history, man, with the SNY yards, it's usually just a boom, boom, boom. They're aiming for a couple dudes getting off their chest, and it is what it is. You know, but I am seeing it get real tricky in the CDC lately. There's been more bodies, more melees, more riots talked about than ever. And the reason is they want you to see that. It's just like mainstream media. They want you to see certain things, fear mongering. They want you to know every little detail of everything that's going down in the CDC because there's a plan there. And the plan is to one day show the courts, look at how wild these guys are. They're animals. Look at how they act when we allow them to associate. And by doing that, what they'll do is they'll implement little programs like social thinking skills, anger management, all these little programs that they put out there, these non-designated programming yards, prison land. These are all idealistic in a way to help people, but they're set there. It's a facade. They're put there to say, look, we were providing programs, but they weren't taking advantage of it. Instead, they were on the yard trying to kill each other. We need to lock these certain individuals back up. They got targets, man. There's guys that they don't want on the yard for whatever reason. And unfortunately, man, in the future, it could go that way. Hopefully it doesn't. What I say, this is my game for anyone who watches that's on the inside. And there's dudes that watch no matter what they say on both sides. Don't feed into the propaganda and the bullshit. I understand you have to do what you have to do because of politics. I'm not going to get into that. That's your thing, right? I recognize it. But the more that you continue to fall into the chaos, the more you're helping the CDC and slamming you back down. That's all I got to say. So 100-man riot goes down to Tehachapi. No bodies, a few scrapes and cuts. I think 4 or 5 people went to the hospital. They're back on the yard. From what I hear, they've now resumed program. It's back up and running. And it just is what it is, man. And I know there's a lot of people that are like, fuck it, let them all kill each other on the SNY. Well, you know, it's still the CDC. And everything that happens on any yard, they don't look at it that way. It reflects on everybody. So you better think about what you asked for while you're asking the gun.